What if I told you that the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the most feared teams in the entire NFL, just found the missing piece that could make them completely, utterly, and terrifyingly unstoppable? Not a new wide receiver. Not a trade deadline acquisition. Not some blockbuster free agent signing. No. The thing that could push this Eagles offense into another dimension entirely is a quarterback coach. A backup quarterback who most casual fans barely know the name of. A guy who spent most of his career holding a clipboard, watching from the sideline, learning, and quietly absorbing everything about the game of football at the highest level possible. His name is Sean Mannion. And right now, the NFL world is waking up to just how massive his presence could be for Jalen Hurts and the entire Eagles offense. Stephen A. Smith saw it. He exploded on First Take about it. And honestly, once you hear what's actually happening in Philadelphia, you might just agree with every single word he said. So buckle up, because we are going deep on this one. We are talking about the Eagles offense, what it's been, what it could become, why Jalen Hurts is standing on the edge of something historic, and why a guy like Shaun Manion might be the spark that sets the whole thing on fire. This is not a quick highlight breakdown. This is the full story. Every layer, every angle, every piece of the puzzle, laid out so you can see exactly why people are losing their minds over what's happening in Philadelphia right now. Let's go. First, you need to understand where the Eagles have been. Because to truly appreciate where they're going, you have to feel the journey they've been on. And it has not been a straight line. It has been a winding road, full of moments where this franchise was right on the edge of greatness, and then pulled back, sometimes by injury, sometimes by circumstance, and sometimes by questions about the guy under center. Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. A city that eats, sleeps, and breathes football. A city that will boo Santa Claus but will absolutely go to war for an Eagles Super Bowl. These fans are passionate in a way that most fan bases can only dream of. They are demanding. They are critical. But they are also fiercely loyal when you earn it. And Jalen Hurts has been on a journey to earn it. When Hurts first arrived in Philadelphia, he came in as a second-round pick out of Oklahoma. A guy who had transferred from Alabama after being benched for Tua Tagovailoa in a national championship game. Think about that for a second. He was benched on the biggest stage in college football. And instead of sulking, instead of quitting, instead of feeling sorry for himself, he transferred, he rebuilt, he worked, and he came back stronger. That story alone told you something about Jalen Hurts as a person. There's a competitive fire in this man that does not go out. It just burns differently depending on what's in front of him. He came into the NFL and became a starter earlier than expected. And in those early years you could see the talent. You could see the mobility. You could see the leadership. But you could also see the inconsistencies in the passing game. There were games where Hurts looked like a guy who could be a franchise quarterback for a decade. And then there were games where you'd watch a specific throw and think, is he ever going to fix that? The critics were loud. And in Philadelphia, when critics are loud, you feel it. You hear it on sports radio. You see it on social media. You feel it in the city. The debate about whether Jalen Hurts was the guy, a true franchise quarterback, a guy who could carry a team to a Super Bowl, that debate raged for a long time. And then came the 2022 season. The 2022 Philadelphia Eagles were one of the best teams in the NFL. They started the season hot. They stayed hot. They went to the Super Bowl. And while they ultimately fell short against the Kansas City Chiefs, a heartbreaking loss that still stings for Eagles fans, Jalen Hurts put on a performance in that game that made the whole world say, okay, this guy is for real. He was running. He was throwing. He was fighting until the very last second. He finished that Super Bowl with one of the best individual quarterback performances in the history of that game from a losing quarterback. And when it was over, and the confetti was falling for Kansas City instead of Philadelphia, Hurts walked off that field with his head held high and a look in his eyes that said, I'll be back. He signed a massive contract extension. He was the guy. No more debate. This was Jalen Hurts' team, Jalen Hurts City, Jalen Hurts' chance to build something legendary. And then 2023 happened. The 2023 season was supposed to be the year. The Eagles had their guy. They had their weapons. Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, one of the most physically dominant wide receiver duos in the entire NFL. Dallas Goedert at tight end. A dominant offensive line. Everything was in place. But the season went sideways. And it went sideways in a way that opened up all those old questions again. The offense sputtered at times. Hurts had stretches where his accuracy was off. There were reads he wasn't making. There were moments where the Eagles' offense, which should have been one of the most explosive in football, just felt stuck. They still made the playoffs. But it wasn't the dominant, freight train Eagles team that people expected. And when their postseason run ended, the conversation immediately shifted to, what needs to change? What does this offense need to unlock the next level? Head coach Nick Sirianni felt the heat. Offensive coordinator Brian Johnson, in his first year calling plays, had his critics. And Jalen Hurts himself had to sit in the offseason and look in the mirror and ask the hard questions. What does he need to get better? What does this offense need to become what it's supposed to be? Now here's where the story gets really interesting. The Eagles made a move in the offseason that, on the surface, might not have seemed like a massive headline. They brought in Shaun Manion to work with Jalen Hurts in a quarterback coaching role. Shaun Manion. If you're a casual NFL fan, maybe you know the name, maybe you don't. He was a third-round pick out of Oregon State back in 2015. A big, tall pocket passer. He spent time with the Rams, the Vikings, the Seahawks. He was a career backup. A journeyman. A guy who never really got a sustained shot as a starter. But here's the thing about guys like Shaun Mannion that people completely overlook. Spending years as a backup in the NFL, studying the game, watching defenses, sitting in film sessions, learning from coaches, understanding the chess match of professional football without the pressure of being the starter, it turns you into a football encyclopedia. These guys see everything. They have time to absorb. They have time to think. They have time to study the game from angles that starters sometimes don't have the luxury of because they're too busy preparing for the next opponent, managing their body, handling the media. Backup quarterbacks who are smart, and Shaun Manion is very smart, become walking repositories of football knowledge. They've seen 1,000 defensive looks. They understand route concepts at a granular level. They can break down film in a way that is incredibly detailed and incredibly useful. And when a backup like that transitions into coaching and working with a starting quarterback, the results can be explosive. The reports coming out of Eagles camp and their off-season work have been eye-opening. Multiple people in and around the organization have talked about what Mannion is doing with Hurts. The way he's breaking things down. The concepts he's helping Hurts see. The pre-snap reads, the coverage recognition, the way he's helping Hurts process information faster. And when you talk about making a quarterback process information faster, you are talking about a fundamental upgrade to everything they do. Because football at the NFL level is a game of milliseconds. A quarterback who can identify a coverage before the snap and know exactly where the ball needs to go the moment it's snapped, that quarterback is operating at an elite level. That quarterback is Tom Brady. That quarterback is Peyton Manning. That quarterback is the guy defenders dread most. Because it's not just about arm talent. It's not just about mobility. Those things matter. But the best quarterbacks in NFL history have always been the ones who could read the game like they were 5 steps ahead of everyone else. Like they were playing chess and everyone else was playing checkers. And the question that has always surrounded Jalen Hurts is whether he can get there. Not physically. He has the arm, he has the legs, he has the toughness. But mentally. In terms of pure quarterback processing. In terms of being the guy who walks to the line of scrimmage and instantly knows exactly what the defense is trying to do and exactly how to attack it. That's the ceiling. And the reports suggest that Shaun Mannion is helping Hurts climb toward it in a way that hasn't happened before. Now, Stephen A. Smith is not someone who deals in subtlety. If you've watched First Take for more than 5 minutes, you know this. The man is a force of nature. He's loud. He's passionate. He's opinionated. And when something genuinely fires him up, when something makes him believe in a real, visceral way, you hear it in every single syllable. And when the topic of Shaun Mannion's impact on Jalen Hurts came up on First Take, Stephen A. exploded. And not in the negative way he sometimes explodes about things. This was excitement. This was a man who has watched football for decades and who recognizes when something is genuinely significant. When a detail about a team doesn't just sound like an off-season puff piece but actually has real weight and real implications. Stephen A. made the point clearly and emphatically. If Jalen Hurts takes the next step as a processor, if the mental game catches up with the physical gifts, the Philadelphia Eagles become a team that is nearly impossible to beat. And he's right. He is absolutely right. Think about what this offense already looks like with everything else in place. You have A.J. Brown. Just stop right there for a second. A.J. Brown is one of the most physically punishing wide receivers in the history of the position. He is 6 feet tall. He runs sub 4.5. He can go over the top and he can go through you. He has the kind of combination of size, speed, and after-the-catch ability that puts defensive coordinators in nightmares. When A.J. Brown catches the football in space, bad things happen for the defense. And when he wins a jump ball in traffic, good luck. There is no good answer for him. Devonta Smith on the other side. The Heisman Trophy winner. The guy everyone doubted because of his size, who has absolutely silenced every critic. He is one of the most precise route runners in the NFL. His footwork coming out of breaks is textbook. He is a nightmare for press corners because he gets clean releases. And he can make big plays. We're talking about a guy who has elite big play ability that completely changes a defense's game plan. Dallas Goedert at tight end. An absolutely elite tight end who makes some people forget he was a backup to Zach Ertz for years. When he is healthy and on the field, he is one of the top 3 tight ends in the game. Full stop. The offensive line has been one of the best in football. They have kept Jalen Hurts clean. They have opened up run lanes. They have created the structural conditions for an offense to thrive. And Jalen Hurts himself is already one of the most dangerous dual-threat quarterbacks in the NFL. His rushing ability alone makes him a matchup problem. His ability to extend plays, to escape pressure, to pick up first downs with his legs when the pocket collapses, that dimension of his game is already elite. So what's the ceiling? If you add improved processing, if you add faster pre-snap reads, if you add cleaner decision-making in the pocket, keeping the ball on his primary receiver when it's the right call instead of bailing too quickly, if you add better ability to exploit man coverage versus zone coverage based on what he's seeing pre-snap, the ceiling is terrifying. Truly terrifying. For the rest of the NFC. And maybe for the rest of the NFL. Stephen A. Smith sees it. And he articulated it in that way he has, where every word lands like a hammer. Let's talk more about what it actually means for a quarterback to unlock their processing ability. Because this is the heart of the story. This is why what Mannion is reportedly doing with Hurts is so significant. When you watch a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, and yes, we're going to reference Mahomes because when we're talking about quarterback ceilings, he is the standard right now. You notice something. He is almost never surprised by what a defense does. He walks to the line. He surveys. And you can practically see his brain working, categorizing, identifying. Is this cover 2? Cover 3? Man coverage? 0. Is the linebacker cheating to the line? Is the safety rotating? Is the corner giving inside leverage or outside leverage? All of that information is being processed in a matter of seconds, sometimes fractions of a second. And based on that processing, Mahomes is making decisions that allow him to be one step ahead. He knows where the hot route is if the defense blitzes. He knows where the single coverage is if they're playing too deep. He knows which receiver is going to win and where the ball needs to be. That is processing. That is what separates a very good quarterback from a generational quarterback. Now, Hurts has shown flashes of this. He has had games where you look at his decision-making and think, that is elite. That is a quarterback who saw it all and delivered it perfectly. He's had moments in his career that gave Eagles fans genuine goosebumps, not because of a scramble or an athletic play, but because of a beautiful, well-thrown pass to a receiver who was open because Hurts identified the coverage and found the weak spot. But the consistency hasn't always been there. And consistency is everything in the NFL. You can't be a championship-caliber quarterback if the mental game shows up sometimes and disappears other times. You need it every week. You need it in the fourth quarter of a playoff game when the pressure is at its absolute maximum. What Mannion is reportedly doing is drilling specific concepts into Hurts' preparation process. Not just telling him what to look for, but training him to look for it in a more systematic, automatic way. So that when he's standing under center in a hostile stadium, With 70,000 fans screaming, and a pass rush that wants to tear his head off, the reads are still there. The recognition is still there. Almost like muscle memory, but for his eyes and brain. It is, in a very real sense, teaching an already great player to see the game differently. And when you teach a player like Jalen Hurts to see the game differently, to see it more clearly and more quickly, you have not just upgraded the player. You have upgraded the entire offense around him. Because now every receiver runs cleaner routes knowing the ball is going to arrive on time. Every play caller can design more complex concepts knowing the quarterback can execute them. Every game plan can go deeper into the playbook knowing the guy under center can handle it. And now let's really go there. Let's talk about what this Eagles offense could look like at full power. Let's paint the picture, because this is where it gets genuinely cinematic. Imagine it. Early in a game. Eagles have the ball in the first quarter. They come out and line up in a formation that looks like they're going to run the ball. Hurts under center, 2 tight ends on the line, heavy personnel. The defense sells out against the run. They load the box. 8 in the box. They're going to stuff this running play before it starts. But Hurts sees it. He sees the safeties creeping down. He sees the coverage that's now one-on-one outside. He sees exactly what they've given him. And pre-snap, before a single player has moved, he knows. He knows that A.J. Brown is about to be in a one-on-one matchup with a corner who is going to lose. He calls an audible. Changes the play at the line. The snap comes. And the next thing you know, A.J. Brown is running a go route down the sideline. The corner is in trail position, and Hurts delivers a ball over the top that drops perfectly into Brown's hands for a 45-yard gain. Touchdown drive. Executed in 60 seconds. Because the quarterback read the defense before the snap and exploited it perfectly. That is what improved processing looks like. That is the play that sets a defense back on its heels. That is the play that makes a defensive coordinator's stomach drop. Because it means you can't hide anything from this quarterback. You can't bring pressure without exposing something. You can't play soft coverage without giving up the run. And you can't play tight coverage without giving up the big play. You are stuck. You are pinned. There is no good answer. And that is what Philadelphia is building toward. That is what Stephen A. Smith was so fired up about. Because he's been watching football his entire adult life and he knows what it looks like when a team is building something special. And he sees it in Philadelphia right now. Let's talk about the competition in the NFC. Because context matters. Understanding who the Eagles need to beat to get to where they want to go, that's important. The NFC is not easy. The Dallas Cowboys are always a conversation, even when things are complicated there. The San Francisco 49ers have been one of the best teams in football over the last several years, with an offense that is incredibly sophisticated and a roster that is loaded with talent. The Detroit Lions have emerged as a genuine powerhouse, a young, hungry, physical team that plays with an edge and has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. The Green Bay Packers have Jordan Love developing into a legitimate top-tier quarterback. The Minnesota Vikings are always dangerous. This is not an easy road. The NFC in the modern era has been an absolute gauntlet, and getting through it requires being elite. Not just good. Not just above average. Elite. Which is exactly why the potential of what's happening with Hurts and Manion matters so much in this context. If the Eagles' offense unlocks to the level that people inside the organization believe it can, they are not just NFC contenders. They are the team to beat in the conference. The 49ers offense, which is incredibly complex and has been one of the best in football under Kyle Shanahan, it requires a very specific type of quarterback. It requires a guy who can manage the system, make the predetermined reads, and execute. And it works brilliantly when all the pieces are right. But it also has a specific ceiling defined by the system itself. The Eagles' offense, if Hurts reaches his ceiling as a processor, it becomes a unique combination of a quarterback-driven, wide-open, read-the-defense and attack system combined with the physical traits that no other quarterback in the NFC has. The running ability, the size, the arm strength, the toughness, paired with the reading and processing, that combination is genuinely unique. You can't scheme against it the same way you scheme against other offenses because there is no perfect blueprint. Defensive coordinators in the NFC need to be losing sleep right now. If Hurts takes that next step, and the reports suggest he is, the Eagles become the nightmare opponent. The one team you absolutely do not want to face in the playoffs. Now let's get into the relationship dynamic between a quarterback and a coach like Mannion. Because this is actually one of the most underrated parts of player development at the NFL level. There is something specifically valuable about a former player, especially a former quarterback, working with a current starting quarterback. It's different from a career coach who never played the position at a high level. It's different from an offensive coordinator who is brilliant schematically but can't tell you what it feels like to stand in the pocket with a defensive end bearing down on you at full speed. Mannion has been in those moments. He has lined up under center in NFL games. He knows what the pressure feels like, literally and figuratively. He knows what it feels like when the snap count goes off and 300-pound men are coming at you. He knows what it feels like to try to process a coverage while your feet are moving and your eyes are scanning and your arm is cocking back. That experiential knowledge, that lived understanding of what it actually takes to play quarterback at the highest level, creates a different kind of communication between coach and player. There's a shorthand. There's a credibility. When Mannion tells Hurts something, Hurts knows it's coming from someone who has been there. Not just someone who has watched it from the sideline or drawn it up on a whiteboard. And in sports, credibility between a player and a coach is everything. If a player believes in what his coach is telling him, if there's trust, if there's respect, the lessons land differently. They stick better. They get implemented more quickly. The player is more willing to try new things, more willing to step outside his comfort zone, more willing to push through the awkward early stages of developing a new skill because he trusts the source. That dynamic between Hurts and Mannion, by all accounts, has been exactly what the Eagles needed. There's a real connection there. A real working relationship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. And when that exists, when a developing player and a brilliant teacher find that groove together, magic can happen. Let's go back to Stephen A. Smith for a moment. Because his explosion on First Take wasn't just emotional. It was analytical. And when Stephen A. is being analytical as well as passionate, that's when you really need to pay attention. He talked about what it means for the league at large. Because if the Eagles' offense reaches its full potential this season, it doesn't just impact Philadelphia. It reshapes the conversation around the entire NFL. It forces teams to rethink how they're building their rosters. It forces coaches to think differently about how they're developing their quarterbacks. It sends a message that the path to offensive greatness isn't always through spending at the skill positions. It's about elevating the quarterback himself. Making the quarterback better, faster, smarter, more decisive. And that is a timeless lesson. It's a lesson that the best coaches in NFL history have understood. That investing in your quarterback's development, really investing, with the right people and the right methods, pays dividends that no free agent signing can match. Because here's the thing. You can add the best receiver in the world to a team with a quarterback who doesn't process the game quickly enough. And that receiver will be underutilized. He'll have days where he's open and the ball never comes his way because the quarterback didn't see it in time. He'll have stretches where his potential is wasted because the system can't use it fully. But when you have a quarterback who can actually see the field, who can identify where every defensive player is going before the ball is even snapped, now every receiver on your team gets to be great. Now that elite receiver gets the ball in the right spots at the right times. Now the tight end gets used in mismatches that the defense thought they were hiding. Now the running back is being handed the ball into exactly the right gap because the quarterback is making the right decision at the line. The quarterback who processes the game at an elite level makes everyone around him better. He is the force multiplier. And that is why Stephen A. was so excited. Because he could see that the Eagles might be about to flip that switch. Let's talk about something that doesn't always get enough attention in these conversations. The mental weight that Jalen Hurts has been carrying. Because when you are a black quarterback in the NFL who is asked to carry a franchise, who has been subject to constant scrutiny about your passing ability, who has had to fight criticism at every step of your career, the mental and emotional dimension of that journey is not nothing. It is real. And it takes a specific kind of mental fortitude to keep showing up, keep working, and keep believing in yourself when the noise is constantly questioning whether you belong. Hurts has never been a guy who lashes out at the critics. He doesn't tweet about them. He doesn't call them out in press conferences. He just works. That is his response to criticism. He goes back to the film room. He goes back to the practice field. He does the work in silence and lets the results speak. And there's something deeply admirable about that. But there's also something in that quiet determination that tells you what kind of person Jalen Hurts is. He is someone who is driven by internal standards, by his own vision of what he can be, rather than external validation. And that kind of athlete, when they finally get access to the right resources, the right coach, the right environment to elevate their game, they take full advantage of it. Because they've already been grinding before the opportunity arrived. Hurts didn't wait for Mannion to start working on his processing. He's been working on his game continuously throughout his career. What Mannion provides is a catalyst, a specific expertise applied in a specific way that accelerates something that was already in motion. And when you combine a player's personal drive with access to elite developmental resources, that is when real leaps happen. That is when you go from very good to great. From great to elite. From elite to legendary. Now I want to take you somewhere that might seem a little unexpected. I want to talk about legacy. Because that's ultimately what all of this is about. For Jalen Hurts, what does it mean to leave a legacy in Philadelphia? What does it mean to be remembered as one of the great quarterbacks in Eagles history? The bar in Philadelphia is high. The Eagles have had great quarterbacks. Ron Jaworski, Randall Cunningham, Donovan McNabb. Michael Vick had his moments. Nick Foles, even as a backup, became a legend for one perfect Super Bowl run. And then there is the shadow of that Super Bowl, the one Hurts played in and came so close to winning. Winning a Super Bowl as the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, delivering that championship to a city that has wanted it so badly for so long, would cement Jalen Hurts as a Philadelphia icon for life. It would put his name alongside the greatest athletes in the history of that city. It would be the moment that defines a career, that defines a city's era of football, that gets replayed forever. And that is not a small thing. That is everything. That is what drives Hurts every single morning when he wakes up and goes to work. That is what drives the hunger. That is what makes him receptive to everything Mannion is teaching. Because he is not just working to be a better quarterback. He is working toward a legacy. Toward that moment when the confetti falls for Philadelphia. And the Eagles, the organization, the coaches, the teammates, they feel it. They can see where this could go. They can see the outline of something potentially historic. And that creates a collective energy within a team that is actually one of the most powerful forces in sports. When everyone on a team genuinely believes they can win it all, not just hopes, not just kind of believes, but truly deeply believes, it changes how they practice. It changes how they prepare. It changes how they handle adversity during the season. It changes how they respond when things go wrong. The Eagles right now feel like a team that believes. And Shaun Mannion's impact on Jalen Hurts, this small off-season story that became a big Stephen A. Smith explosion, is part of why that belief is so real. Let's talk about Nick Sirianni for a moment. Because his role in all of this matters. Sirianni has been under pressure. That's just the truth. Philadelphia is not a patient city. When the Eagles underperformed in 2023, when the offense didn't live up to its potential, Sirianni felt the heat. There were genuine conversations about whether changes needed to be made at the head coaching level. He survived. He adapted. And one of the things he did, whether directly or by creating the organizational culture where it could happen, was bring the right people around his quarterback. Investing in Hurts' development in this specific way, through a relationship with someone like Mannion, shows a certain kind of coaching wisdom. It says, I know my quarterback is capable of more. And I know what it takes to get him there. And I am going to put the resources in place to make that happen. Great head coaches have always understood this. The best head coaches in NFL history have been the ones who built environments where their star players could grow. Where they weren't just maintained at their current level but were actively pushed higher. Where development was treated as a continuous process and not something that stopped after a player reached a certain level of success. If Hurts takes the leap this season that the off-season reports suggest is possible, Sirianni deserves real credit for creating the conditions where it could happen. For trusting the process. For not just shuffling the deck with big signings and trades, but for investing in the quarterback himself. Let me paint another picture for you. Let's go somewhere vivid. It's mid-October. The Eagles are playing a road game in a tough environment. It's loud. The crowd is hostile. The weather is cold, that bitter kind of cold where your breath fogs and the ball feels different in your hands. The Eagles are down by 4 in the fourth quarter. 8 minutes left. They have the ball on their own 25-yard line. The defense across from them has been talking all game. Trash talking. Getting in heads. Feeling confident. Hurts walks to the huddle. And here's the thing about Hurts in these moments. Everyone in that huddle feels it. The calm. The focus. The absolutely unshakable belief that they're going to find a way. It's in his eyes. It's in his posture. It's in the way he calls the play. They break the huddle. He walks to the line. And now, this is the moment where the Mannion work matters. This is the moment where all those early morning film sessions, all those detailed conversations about coverage recognition, all that preparation becomes real. He looks left. He looks right. He's reading the defense before the snap. He sees what they're trying to do. He sees a safety who is shading toward the slot. He sees a corner who is playing way off on the outside. He sees a linebacker who is cheating toward the line, anticipating run. He sees all of it, before a single player has moved. And then the snap comes. And because he knew what was coming, because he had already processed it, he is operating a split second faster than the defense expected. His eyes are already where they need to be. The window is there before the defender can close it. The throw comes out. On time. On target. First down. Move the chains. 3 plays later, a short completion to Goddard who turns it into a 20-yard gain. 2 plays after that, A.J. Brown in one-on-one coverage, just like we talked about, and Hurts puts the ball exactly where only Brown can get it. Touchdown. Eagles lead. They hold on. They win. And in the locker room afterward, when the reporters ask Hurts what he saw on that go-ahead drive, he'll give some version of his typical answer. Something humble, something team-focused, something about trusting his guys. But what he really saw was everything. He saw the whole board. And he knew exactly how to attack it. That is the Eagles' offense when it's unlocked. That is what Philadelphia could be looking at this season. And that is why Stephen A. Smith exploded. Let's take a step back and think about the bigger picture of what this means for the NFL conversation around quarterback development. For years, decades, really, the conversation around improving NFL quarterbacks has focused primarily on one thing: adding weapons around them. Get the quarterback a better offensive line. Get him a faster wide receiver. Give him a dynamic running back to take pressure off. And all of those things matter. All of those things are real. But the piece that sometimes gets undervalued is this: what are you doing to make the quarterback himself better? What are the people directly around him teaching him? What is the structure of his learning environment? Who is he spending his extra time with? Who is breaking down film with him and showing him the things he needs to see? The teams that have had sustained success at the quarterback position: New England with Brady, Kansas City with Mahomes, San Francisco's repeated ability to develop quarterbacks within Shanahan's system, they all have something in common. An organizational commitment to quarterback development that goes beyond just signing the guy and hoping he figures it out. It's the architecture of learning, the system of development, the specific relationships between coaches and players that create the conditions for growth. And Philadelphia, with this Mannion-Hurts relationship, might have just found their version of that architecture. Their specific formula. And if it works the way early reports suggest it might, if Hurts genuinely levels up in the ways that people inside the organization believe he can, this becomes a case study. This becomes the example that other teams point to. The story of how Shaun Manion unlocked Jalen Hurts. How a journeyman backup quarterback who never got his chance as a starter became the teacher who helped a franchise quarterback reach his ceiling. How the Eagles, by investing in the right relationship, transformed from a good team into a great one. That is a story for the ages. And we might be right at the beginning of it. Now, I want to be honest with you. Because this video wouldn't be complete without acknowledging the other side of this. There is still work to be done. Reports are encouraging, but they are off-season reports. And the NFL has a long history of players who looked transformative in the spring and then showed up to the regular season and the issues were still there. The off-season is different. The speed is different. The defensive complexity is different. Everything that can be done in a controlled setting in April looks better than it will in October against a fully prepared defense. So there are questions that remain. Is this real development, or is it off-season optimism? Can Hurts sustain the improvement across a full 17-game season? When the Eagles face the best defenses in the NFL, the kind of defenses that are specifically designed to take away one thing and dare you to beat them another way, will the processing hold up under that specific kind of pressure? These are fair questions. And anyone who tells you they know for certain how it will unfold is overselling their crystal ball. Football has a way of humbling every prediction. It is the great equalizer. But here is what we can say with confidence. The ingredients are there. The talent is there. The weapons are there. The organization is invested. The quarterback has shown the willingness to grow. And now there is a specific, targeted developmental relationship that addresses one of the most important areas of improvement for this offense. That combination, talent plus commitment plus the right developmental support, is the recipe. It doesn't guarantee success, but it puts a team in position to achieve it. And that is ultimately what makes this story so compelling. It's not a guarantee. It's a possibility. A real, credible, exciting possibility. And in the NFL, that's all you can ask for. You set up the conditions and then you go play the game. Let's talk about what a truly unlocked Eagles offense does to the rest of the NFC playoff picture. If Philadelphia comes out this season and the offense is operating at the level we've been describing, if Hurts is processing faster, making better decisions, exploiting defenses with the kind of pre-snap reads that elite quarterbacks make, what does that do to the teams around them? The Cowboys are in a complicated situation at quarterback. They have Dak Prescott, who is talented but who has his own ceiling and has not been able to push Dallas over the Super Bowl hump. If the Eagles are truly rolling, the NFC East becomes more of a one-team conversation than it already was. The 49ers are a monster. Kyle Shanahan's offense is one of the most sophisticated in football. Their quarterback situation has had uncertainty, but their system creates competence. They are going to be in the NFC Championship picture. An Eagles-49ers NFC Championship game, with both teams at full strength, would be one of the most compelling matchups in recent memory. Two different philosophies. Two different quarterback types. Two teams with legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. That is a game that the entire football world would stop to watch. The Lions are hungry. Detroit has that edge, that chip on their shoulder, that I've been sleeping on too long.